Hello and welcome to the latest in our Insider interview video series. Today I'm joined by James Dow, who is fund manager of the Baillie Gifford Responsible Global Equity Income Fund. James, thanks for your time today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So James, the fund invests in sustainable growth stocks that are also resilient dividend payers. Could you talk us through the key attributes and characteristics that you like to see in a business?
Sure. Well, we're quite picky about what we own. We want our clients to own really fantastic companies. So we've got a pretty long list of qualities and attributes that we look for, but let me give you a few of them. A big one for sure is we want every company to have a really strong, attractive growth opportunity, to be able to grow its sales and profits for at least the next 10 years. So if you look, for example, at our largest holding in the fund, which is Novo Nordisk, a pharmaceutical company, they're a leader in making insulin for diabetes and appetite suppressants for people controlling their weight. And our view is there's a huge growth opportunity, really attractive growth opportunity in sales and profits for the company as more people are diagnosed with diabetes and also with the appetite suppressants. So growth is a really big part of it. Another key one for us is a really great business model with attractive financial characteristics. So companies that are doing something that's really valuable for their customers and that's really hard for other people to do. So if you think of Novo Nordisk again, it's definitely really valuable for the customers. It's often a life-saving or life-changing treatment, and it's very hard for other people to do, and that means they have attractive profits, attractive returns on capital. Third one would be very cash generative businesses. So businesses that not only can invest for future growth, but they have loads of cash left over at the end, which they can then pay back to shareholders as dividends. And that gives them an enhanced return, an even higher return if they're also getting those dividends. Final one I would always pick out would